If you want people to stop disrespecting you, stop trying to scare them. Make your boundaries so clear and your self-respect so consistent that people understand disrespect will cost them access to you. Real power is not loud. It does not threaten. It does not lose control. It simply refuses to reward bad behavior. There is a psychological pattern most people never notice. People learn how to treat you partly through what you repeatedly tolerate. If someone insults you and you laugh it off every time, they learn that the behavior has no consequence. If someone constantly interrupts you and you keep explaining yourself instead of addressing it, they learn that your words carry little weight. If someone repeatedly crosses a boundary and you continue giving them the same access to your time, attention, and trust, your boundary becomes nothing more than a sentence. This is why the first step toward earning respect is not becoming more aggressive. It is becoming more consistent. You don't need to react to every slight. In fact, reacting emotionally to every provocation can give another person control over you. They discover exactly which buttons to press, and suddenly your emotional state is being controlled by whoever knows how to provoke you. That is not power. Power begins when you can pause. Someone makes a disrespectful comment. You don't immediately explode. You don't start shouting. You don't insult them back. You take a moment and decide whether the behavior deserves a response. Sometimes it does. And when it does, keep the response simple. I don't accept being spoken to that way. No long speech. No desperate attempt to convince them. No emotional performance. Just clarity. Then comes the part most people avoid. Action. If they continue, you change the level of access they have to you. You end the conversation. You leave the situation. You stop sharing personal information. You reduce your involvement. You create distance. This is where your words acquire meaning. A boundary without action teaches people that the boundary is negotiable, but consistency teaches them something different. You mean what you say. And notice the difference between this and intimidation. Intimidation requires fear. Self-respect requires discipline. You don't need another person to be afraid of you. You need to be unwilling to participate in situations that repeatedly violate your dignity. That distinction is crucial. When you stop rewarding disrespect with attention, arguments, and endless explanations, you remove the incentive for someone to continue provoking you. You become less predictable emotionally because you are no longer reacting automatically. You become calm, and calmness can be far more powerful than anger. The person who knows you will scream is easy to provoke. The person who knows you will calmly walk away is much harder to control. This doesn't mean becoming cold toward everyone. Give people room to make ordinary mistakes. Humans misunderstand each other. People have bad days. A single careless comment doesn't define an entire relationship. Look for patterns. Is the person willing to listen when you explain that something bothered you? Do they apologize? Do they change their behavior? Or do they repeatedly cross the same line because they know you will eventually tolerate it? Your answer should be based on behavior. And remember, respect is not something you demand by force. It is something you reinforce through the way you carry yourself. You teach people that your time matters by protecting it. You teach people that your words matter by following through. You teach people that your trust matters by giving it carefully. The goal is not to make everyone afraid of you. The goal is to become someone who no longer needs to tolerate disrespect just to keep people around. Stop rewarding disrespect with access, and let your calm consistency become the consequence. The second lesson is even more important. Before you can expect anyone to respect your boundaries, you must learn to control yourself when those boundaries are challenged. Most people believe power means having the ability to make others uncomfortable. But real power begins when another person's behavior can no longer control your emotional state. Think about what happens when someone deliberately provokes you. They make a sarcastic comment. They question your intelligence. They interrupt you. They dismiss something important to you. Instantly, something inside you rises. Your heart beats faster. Your mind begins preparing a response. You want to prove that they cannot speak to you that way, and suddenly they have control. Not because they are stronger than you, but because they discovered how easily they can move your emotions. This is why emotional control is one of the foundations of personal power. It doesn't mean suppressing anger. Anger can tell you that something important has been violated, but anger is information, not instructions. You can feel it without immediately acting from it. Pause, breathe. Observe what is happening. Ask yourself, what response actually serves me here? That question creates distance between emotion and action, and inside that distance is your freedom. If someone insults you and you immediately insult them back, you've entered their game. If they raise their voice and you automatically raise yours, you've allowed them to determine your behavior. If they become aggressive and you lose your composure, you may end up saying something that weakens your position rather than protecting it. Calmness gives you options. You can respond firmly. You can leave. You can postpone the conversation. You can ask them to speak respectfully. You can decide that the relationship no longer deserves your energy. You have choices because you are not reacting blindly. This is especially important when dealing with people who understand exactly how to provoke you. Some people test boundaries through small provocations. They watch what you tolerate. They notice what makes you angry. They learn which subjects create insecurity. If you react explosively every time, they learn that emotional pressure works. Don't give them that advantage. Become difficult to provoke, not because you are emotionless, but because you have developed enough awareness to recognize what is happening inside you before it controls your behavior. There will be moments when walking away is stronger than winning the argument. There will be moments when silence is more intelligent than explanation. There will be moments when saying, "We can discuss this when we're both calm," demonstrates more strength than shouting ever could. And remember, emotional control does not mean accepting disrespect silently. You can be calm and firm at the same time. You can say exactly what you will not tolerate without becoming cruel. That combination is powerful. You don't need to prove that you are angry enough to deserve respect. Your boundary should stand whether your voice is loud or quiet. The person who controls their emotions can make decisions based on principles rather than impulses. They don't allow temporary anger to destroy long-term relationships. They don't allow fear to keep them in unhealthy situations. They don't allow another person's mood to determine their entire day. That is self-command, and once you develop it, people may notice something different about you. They realize that provoking you doesn't automatically produce the reaction they expected. Your calmness becomes a form of protection because you remain capable of choosing your response. Pastor yourself first, because the person who cannot control their emotions will always be vulnerable to someone who knows how to trigger them. A boundary means nothing if it exists only in your words. You can tell someone, "Don't speak to me like that." But if they continue doing it and you remain available in exactly the same way, your message becomes easy to ignore. This is why real power comes from what you consistently do after you communicate a limit. You don't need to announce every boundary dramatically. In fact, the strongest boundaries are often simple. "This conversation isn't productive, so I'm leaving. I won't discuss my private life. If you continue speaking disrespectfully, we'll talk another time." Then follow through. The mistake many people make is giving endless warnings. They explain the same boundary 5 times, hoping the other person will finally understand. But someone who repeatedly ignores a clearly communicated limit may not have a communication problem. They may have learned that your words have no consequences. Don't turn boundaries into threats. A threat says, "Do what I want, or I'll punish you." A boundary says, If this continues, I will decide what I do next. That difference changes everything. You are not controlling the other person. You are controlling your participation. If someone repeatedly insults you, you can leave the conversation. If someone constantly demands access to your personal life, you can stop sharing private information. If someone repeatedly disrespects your time, you can stop making yourself endlessly available. The consequence doesn't have to be dramatic. Sometimes it is simply less access. And consistency matters more than intensity. You don't need to become furious one day and forgiving the next. If a particular behavior crosses your line, respond according to your values every time. This creates predictability. People learn that your boundaries are not emotional outbursts. They are decisions. But remember to leave room for ordinary human mistakes. A healthy boundary isn't a weapon for controlling every imperfect interaction. Someone can misunderstand you, apologize, and make an effort to change. That's different from someone who repeatedly crosses the same line because they know you will eventually surrender. Watch what happens after the boundary is communicated. That response tells you more than their original excuse ever could. Say less, enforce calmly, and let your actions give your boundaries the meaning your words alone never could. There is a moment when you discover how much power you actually have. The moment you become comfortable walking away. Not because you hate people, not because you want to punish them, but because you finally understand that your peace is worth more than maintaining every connection at any cost. Many people tolerate disrespect because they are afraid of losing someone. They fear being alone. They fear rejection. They fear what others will think. They fear that if they leave, they may never find another relationship, friendship, opportunity, or source of approval. And that fear makes them negotiate against themselves. But when you become genuinely comfortable walking away, something changes. You stop begging people to treat you well. You stop explaining your worth. You stop chasing someone who repeatedly demonstrates that they don't value your presence. Walking away doesn't mean you must always end the relationship. Sometimes it simply means leaving the conversation. Sometimes it means taking space. Sometimes it means reducing access. And sometimes, when the pattern is consistently harmful, it means ending the relationship entirely. The important thing is that your decision comes from clarity rather than revenge. You don't walk away to make someone panic. You walk away because you recognize that remaining in the same pattern is costing you too much. This is where self-respect becomes visible. Anyone can demand respect when everything is going their way. The real test comes when you are emotionally attached and still have the courage to say, "This isn't acceptable to me." You don't need to threaten departure. You simply need to be willing to follow through when your values require it. And once people understand that your presence is a choice rather than a desperate need, your relationships change. Those who respect you will adjust. Those who only valued your availability may disappear. Let them. Losing access to you is not always a loss. Sometimes it is the natural consequence of refusing to accept less than you deserve. When you stop fearing the loss of people who disrespect you, you become much harder to control and far easier to respect. Respect becomes powerful when people know that your standards are consistent. You don't need to threaten anyone, raise your voice, or create an intimidating image. If your behavior changes every time you're challenged, people will never know where your boundaries actually stand. Consistency creates credibility. If you say you won't continue a conversation when someone becomes disrespectful, then calmly end the conversation when that happens. If you say you value honesty, practice it even when the truth is uncomfortable. If you expect people to respect your time, respect your own time enough to stop making yourself endlessly available. Your actions teach people what your words mean. This is why aggression is often weaker than discipline. Aggression can create temporary fear, but consistency creates a lasting understanding. People learn that you don't need to explode before you act. They know that when you make a decision, you follow through. And that reputation does not need to be built through intimidation. In fact, the strongest people often appear calm. They don't threaten consequences. They have no intention of enforcing. They don't make dramatic announcements. They simply respond according to their principles. This also means being fair. If you demand respect, give it. If you expect honesty, practice honesty. If you want people to listen to your boundaries, listen to theirs. Respect becomes much stronger when it is mutual rather than one-sided. You don't need everyone to agree with you. You need people to understand that your behavior is predictable because your values are stable. Over time, this creates a quiet form of authority. People know what to expect from you. They understand that kindness doesn't mean weakness, and that patience doesn't mean unlimited tolerance. You can be warm without being easily manipulated. You can be forgiving without becoming careless. You can be firm without becoming cruel. That balance is what makes your presence credible. Don't build your reputation on fear. Build it on consistency, integrity, and the quiet certainty that you will always follow through on your values. The deepest form of power is not making people afraid of you. It is becoming so grounded in yourself that you no longer need to intimidate anyone to feel powerful. When your emotions are controlled, your boundaries are clear, your standards are consistent, and your willingness to walk away is real. Your presence begins to speak before you say a word. You don't need to enter a room demanding respect. You carry yourself with it. People notice when someone doesn't desperately seek approval. They notice when you can listen without shrinking, disagree without becoming hostile, and leave without creating unnecessary drama. That kind of presence creates a quiet authority because it comes from self-command rather than performance. And this is where the idea of power becomes deeper. You cannot control how everyone treats you. Some people will misunderstand you. Some will dislike you. Some will test your limits. Your responsibility is not to dominate every person you encounter. Your responsibility is to decide what deserves your energy. Don't waste your strength proving that you are strong. Use it to build yourself, build discipline, build emotional intelligence, build competence. Build a life that doesn't collapse when someone withdraws their approval. The stronger your foundation becomes, the less dependent you are on controlling other people. And when someone disrespects you, you don't have to become their mirror. You don't need to answer cruelty with cruelty. You don't need revenge to prove that you have power. Sometimes the most powerful response is calm distance. Sometimes it is a firm sentence. Sometimes it is simply walking away. Your goal should never be to make everyone fear you. Fear is unstable. The moment circumstances change, fear disappears. But self-respect, consistency, and integrity create something far more durable. Let people understand that access to you comes with mutual respect. Let your actions demonstrate that your boundaries are real. Let your calmness show that provocation cannot easily control you. And most importantly, never sacrifice your character simply to win a battle. True power is not making others afraid of your anger. It is becoming so secure in yourself that disrespect no longer has the power to control you.